Welcome back folks for another video on what's coming up next for water tanks. Now with the 9.3 patch, the Germans will receive a tier 8 light tank called the Ru-251. It will come directly after the Panther at tier 7, the crab panther, and will be another way of reaching the leopard prototype instead of playing the Indian panzer. Now the Indian panzer is not a bad tank, it's just that if you prefer playing a light tank over a medium tank, you get the chance of playing the Ru-251 instead of playing the Indian panzer for the leopard prototype. So with the introduction of the Ru-251, it will see a lot of competition at tier 8, such as the French AMX 1390, the Chinese WZ132, and the new tier 8 American light tank, the T49. Now the T49 is a reused name instead of the T49 at tier 5, which is a tank destroyer. So this will be like a super chafy. As you can see here with the pictures of the Ru-251, it is more of an early model of a leopard tank with less road wheels than the leopard and a different turret. The turret is somewhat bigger and the caliber of gun is smaller. It has a 90mm gun instead of the 105mm gun on the leopard. Now here are the in-game models for the Ru-251. As you can see, the tank has a very wide turret as well as hull armor, meaning that this tank will most likely get shot at and easily get hit if it does active scouting. So this tank is more suited to a passive scouting role instead of an active scouting role because of the size of the tank. This tank also has no armor, as you can see here from the collision model of the tank. The frontal hull armor is only 30mm. The turret armor is only about 20mm. So this tank has no armor whatsoever, and it is pretty big for a light tank. So this tank will be easily penetrated and get shot at if it does a lot of active scouting. So here are the main stats for the Ru-251. As you can see, the tank will cost you about 2.5 million credits and weighs about 25 tons. So the only thing that you should ram with this thing is probably the AMX 1390. Other than that, do not ram any other stuff because you're a light tank. However, this tank does get a very chunky amount of health at 1200 HP. So that means this tank could take about 2 or 3 hits, or even 4 from a few tanks. This tank also has a very good standardized view range of 400 meters and radial range of 745 meters. Engine power is very good at 630, giving the specific power of 25.6, meaning that this tank does shift pretty well. However, the terrain resistance on this tank is kind of bad at 0.7 for hard terrain, 0.7 for hard terrain, 0.8 for medium terrain, and 1.5 for soft terrain. So what this means is this tank will slosh around and feels more sluggish in comparison to the WZ132. Now this tank has the same resistance, almost the same resistance, like the Chafee. So if you've already driven the Chafee before, this will feel a lot like the Chafee in terms of ground resistance. Now maximum speed is very good, 80 km per hour, so this tank does shift pretty fast in a straight line. I think that might be the best top speed of all tanks in the game. So 80 km per hour is very good. Reverse speed is also very good, 24 km per hour, so this tank can drive backwards pretty well. Traverse speed of the hull is pretty decent at 44 degrees per second, but it is not as legendary as the WZ132, which turns about 54. So this tank does turn pretty well, but doesn't turn super well. So this is not a very good brawling medium or light tank. So you cannot play the role of a medium as well as a WZ132. However, the turn traverse is also good, at almost 46 degrees per second. So that's pretty nice. So you can still use this tank as a flanking medium when it needed. So that's pretty decent. And the gun on the Ru-251 is a 90mm gun. It does 190mm penetration and 240 damage per shot. It fires about every 6 seconds or so and has 10 rounds per minute of fire rate. So given these stats, the DPM on this tank is about 2422, which is very good for a light tank. It carries 41 rounds, has 2 seconds of aim time, which is okay, 0.345 accuracy, which is okay-ish for a German tank. It is not good for a German tank. German tanks could go up to 0.31, so if this tank has a 0.31 accuracy, this will be great for a German tank, but it's alright. Aiming circle spread after shooting is okay-ish, above normal. On turret traverse is also above normal. with damage gun is the same, and on full turret traverse is also pretty good. Gun elevation is decent at 18 degrees. Gun depression is only 5.8, which is kind of bad, but still workable. Turret traverse speed is okay-ish, 35. Now I don't know why it says 35 here for the turret traverse and 45.9 on the leak stats. So there's a conflict between the turret traverse, but the turret does turn pretty well. Now it depends if it's 45 or 35. 35 means that this tank will not perform as well as a medium tank role, whereas 45.9 is very workable as a medium tank. Armor wise, it's okay. Armor is below average for the gun. Health is also below average for the gun, so this gun might get knocked out pretty easily if it gets shot in the mantlet or in the turret. So it weighs okay-ish, weighs less than normal, and the penetration does follow. It does, however, carry heat shells and 250mm pen, instead of the APCR used by the WZ-132. So in comparison, the Ru-251 is like a better version of the WZ-132. However, the WZ-132 turns faster than the Ru-251. The hull traverse is 56 degrees per second, whereas the hull traverse for the Ru-251 is only 44. So that means the WZ can outbrawl the Ru-251. However, the Ru-251 has more health and has about the same gun with better DPM. So all in all, the Ru-251 plays like a mobile sniper, like all German tanks. It's supposed to get into position fast and snipe at enemy tanks with a very good DPM. If you look at the WZ-132, DPM wise, it's not as good as the Ru-251 because the gun doesn't fire as fast. Penetration wise, it has about the same penetration and same amount of damage. So the Ru-251 has a better 90mm gun than the WZ's 100mm gun. So that's a main difference. Now the Ru-251 also has an 80 km/h top speed, which is crazy in comparison to the 64 km/h top speed. So the Ru-251 probably could get to position pretty fast and start scouting. Now I would presume then the camo rating on the Ru-251 is not as good as the WZ-132 because the tank is pretty huge. Now the WZ-132 is also a very big tank, so I don't know, the turret might give it away. So the turret is kind of square in my opinion in comparison to the WZ-132. So the Ru-251 might have a worse camo rating than the WZ. So you might have to take that in mind when you're just rushing forward with that 80 km/h top speed. So all in all, the Ru-251 plays a lot like the Panther at tier 8 instead of tier 7. It does get 40 more millimeters of pen, but it needs that 40 more millimeters of pen because it only faces tier 9s and 10 tanks. So it needs that more penetration. You want to go through tougher targets. However, this tank I think sacrifices camo rating for health because this tank is as big as a Leopard tank. So it is not as sneaky as an AMX 1390, but it does have more health than the AMX 1390 by at least 33%. The AMX 1390 has about 900 health, so it does have more health than the other tier 8 lights. This tank also moves pretty good in a straight line at 80 km/h, but turns poorly with the worst terrain resistance. So it does shift okay-ish and get into position fast, but don't expect this thing to brawl with other light tanks or medium tanks. So you should stay away from any opposition that you try to brawl away from. And this tank is a very big target and doesn't turn as well, meaning that this tank doesn't brawl with medium tanks. So don't try to circle strafe medium tanks. That's a bad idea. You can circle strafe slow heavy tanks such as the STI or the E75, but you have no armor and the gun's not that penetrating, so be aware of that. But in that, Ru-251 does seem like all German designs in comparison to other tanks. So for example, the Comet, which is a tier 7 British tank, plays a lot like a flanking, circle strafing medium tank, whereas the Panther, the German tier 7 medium tank, plays a bit slower, sluggish, and doesn't turn as well, but has a very good sniping gun. So that's the main comparison. On one side you have a sniping tank. On the other side, you have a brawling tank. So basically, the WZ is more of a brawling light tank, whereas the RU-251 is more of a sniping light tank. So I think you have to get into the mindset of playing the RU-251 from the back with passive scouting and sniping roles instead of the YOLOing, zigzagging WZ-132. However, this tank is not bad. It does go pretty fast, in my opinion. But other than that, the RU-251 looks very cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and comment below on what you think about this new Tier 8 German light tank. Now, if you like what you saw and want to see more, subscribe to my channel, and I'll post more of these leaked upcoming videos for World of Tanks, as well as my reviews on current tanks and whatnot. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Rate, comment, subscribe if you can. That will help me out a lot. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.